Welcome back, you guys, to a special episode here on the O'Shea Vlogcast channel. I am your host, O'Shea Duke Jackson, and we always have the most interesting content here in Black YouTube. And today, I'm gonna need y'all to use those neurons because we're gonna take you real deep with a very interesting topic. And of course, Black people love conspiracy theories, and so. But today we have Brother Ronald Armstrong. His religious name, how do you say your name, man? And I don't want to mess your name up.
Qesankh Kheperu.
Okay, yes. Hotep. And that is why conspiracy theorists have half a brain. All right. So welcome back, brother. We've done a few shows together on both my channels. How you doing today?
Oh, good, brother. Thank you. I'm glad to be back again and having this discussion.
Yeah. I was trying to get you on, especially with that political panel with Anthony Brian Logan. And that was a really good exchange you guys had about 6 or 7 months ago. And I think you'll be with us on Sunday, yeah?
Correct, yes.
It'll be exciting. So that's going to be awesome. Please get his ass. All right. So let me ask you this, man. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself for those people who may not know you or remember you from the last time we did a show.
Yeah, my background is filmmaking. I'm a filmmaker, and I also work at building websites. I also run a spiritual community, and basically I have a website at Kheperu.com, and I put out a lot of information for the spiritual community. Now, I'm not part of what some would call as the Hotep community. I'm very different from that. In fact, I did study to be a priest, and I'm a Kemetic priest. So I try to put out a lot of information that's kind of apart and different from that community to help educate people and to really come into a sense of who they are as God men and God women, And it's something that's open to anybody. It's just not for the African-American community. It's, I teach a wide array of people from Latino brothers and sisters, white, Asian. So my community is multicultural.
Okay, cool. Let me ask you this question because this is usually for a topic I'm able to keep up with what's going on just a little bit, but whenever I do a show with you, man, I'm like, I don't even know where to start because this is not necessarily my lane. So, but what I want to know is this: what made you come up with this particular topic for this show?
Well, I started, I don't consider myself a conspiracy theorist. I hate that term. And I think a lot of people in the conspiracy theory arena hate it as well. But when I started getting into the whole spiritual aspects of the metaphysical stuff and all that, I started to see some very curious things. And I saw where there were a lot of the so-called conspiracy theorists were on point with some of the things they were saying. But then I saw this wide gap. And I said, wait a minute, they are missing something. And I began to see that they themselves were the ones that were covering things up. And that's when I started to explore it a little bit more. And I say, hey, there's something going on with these guys that they're missing the target. And I said, this would be a great subject for a show to talk about. And I also consequently wrote an article about it. It's on my website that you can visit and read the article in detail about how they're missing the mark. And it's not by accident. They're doing it on purpose. So you could say like the conspiracy theorists themselves are involved in a cover-up.
Okay. Give me some examples because when people say conspiracy theories, can you give some examples that some people would know about or will be able to describe as what is a conspiracy theory?
Well, a conspiracy theory would be like the Earth is flat. And right. You have flat earthers who are coming out and saying that we've been lied to and that Earth is not round. So that's an example of a conspiracy theory. And another conspiracy theory you can say is the JFK assassination. People say Oswald didn't shoot JFK. That's an example of some conspiracy theories.
Okay, let's talk about conspiracy theories with results too. I mean, obviously you've studied a lot of African history, and we've seen like I know I saw Moses, right, and then it was like with Charlton Heston, everybody was white. Is that also in a way like conspiracy theory? In certain ways, like trying to take away, giving whites more of the black credit for things that blacks done?
Precisely, exactly. And this is one of the things where conspiracy theories need to be held accountable for this, because one of the things that they will do, and you'll see, is they will say, well, how did the ancient Egyptians or Kemetians build the pyramids? These are a magnificent feat of engineering. You know, the pyramids, the Great Pyramid is aligned with the Orion's belt. And you'd have to have a knowledge of a sophisticated knowledge of mathematics and astronomy to be able to do this, right? So instead of them discussing this as this is a product of an indigenous people of African descent, Black people, who reached the zenith of society. And Egypt was a civilization that existed for more than 10,000 years, and it was the most moral, upright civilization the planet has ever seen. But instead of them saying that, they're up there saying, and this is a conspiracy theorist, well, the only way that we, and they use that term we, could have built the pyramids is by alien intervention. So during the ancient times, aliens visited us and passed their knowledge off to us, which enabled us to build the pyramids. Now, let's understand this. And this is where we have to give our people credit. We have been ahead of the curve in this whole conspiracy theory thing. We have been saying for years that this whole thing about who built the pyramids, about ancient civilizations, has been a massive cover-up to take the credit away from Black people. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And the conspiracy theorists, instead of dealing with that issue and blatantly saying, hey, you know what? Most indigenous cultures, Chinese, Mayan cultures, Indian cultures, were, they got to the advanced level that they were because of the indigenous people of color. Instead of them saying that, they come up with these wild excuses as to why they were so advanced and morally upright. Okay. Now, that's a conspiracy. They're covering something up, and they blatantly know they're doing it. Mm-hmm. There was no alien intervention. Let me just go a little bit deeper into this, because this is involving science, right? When you have individuals develop, depending upon the region of the planet, okay? When you have a hot, warm climate region, it is conducive to people of melanated complexion. When you are developing in a cold climate in Europe, you don't have melanin because you're not exposed to the sun. Okay, so you get demelanated. All right. So people who are birthed in a hot climate are right brain. People who are in a cold climate are left brain. Left brain thinkers are linear. Okay, they look at the physical. It's hard for them to conceptualize metaphysical things. Okay, and this is where we get Europeans from. They're very physical in their aspect. Their idea of God has to be a physical entity. Where if you look at Kemet in most indigenous cultures, our concept of God is God as Amen, the hidden. You can't feel, you can't see, the no-thingness. Because we have an understanding of abstract concepts. So where am I going with this? So when you have, when African people, because they're right brain, they think of the 3 C's: communal, cooperative, and collective efforts. Okay, so they have an opportunity to develop their culture and their civilization to the highest level because the food and the resources are abundant. They're not nomadic, so they can settle and civilization can thrive. Whereas if you're in the cold climate of Europe, you're nomadic, you're traveling, food is scarce, you become more aggressive. And a trait of the left brain is to think more individualistic. So if you're individualistic in thinking, because that's a survival mechanism, you're not going to be apt to share. You're going to be more covetous in terms of what you have because the food is scarce, right? So if you look at that science, then you know that the only people that could have built the pyramids are people who come out of a right brain culture, who are people are melanated complexion. Science proved this. We know this, but the conspiracy theorists want to attribute it to something else. And let me take this a bit further, right? Okay. So now they come out with another conspiracy theory, all right? And they're saying that, well, there's these wars on the planet and man is very aggressive and warlike and mongering. And this is attributed to the fact that our DNA has been altered. And this comes out of the Sumerian text, Anunnaki and all of that, where they found out that, oh, there's this ancient fable in the Sumerian tablets where it talks about these aliens, the Anunnaki, who came and altered our DNA to make us more warlike and aggressive. Well, you know what? That's an ancient text that can be interpreted in many ways, okay? Now, instead of them, and they use the term we again, because they have to keep using that we. When I hear that term we, I'm like, who are you referring to? Because there are many civilizations on the planet and many races and cultures. So when you say we, you got to define it. Are you talking about Europeans? Are you talking about Africans? Are you talking about Asians? Get specific. But they use that term we. They say, well, man or we are aggressive. And the reason we're aggressive because our DNA have been altered by aliens. Okay, that's bull. So in other words, for them to get around the fact that their culture came out of Europe, a cold climate where they had to adapt to the climate and become more left brain. And we know that in the very beginning, the migration came out of Africa about 35 to 40,000 years ago. They came out of Africa, migrated to Europe. The first Europeans were of dark melanin complexion, but they adapted to the climate, the cold climate, and they lost their melanin and they became more left brain than right brain through neuroplasticity. That means your brain is adapting and rewiring for the environment. So we know that they had to become, our ancestors or their ancestors had to become more aggressive because of the climate. They had to fight for food. They had to become more individualistic. Okay. So instead of them saying, well, the reason why Western man or European man is so aggressive is because of the climate that we derive from. And that this is not indicative of all races on the planet, because most of the races and non-Western religions are peaceful. You don't see Hinduism going out there starting wars. You don't see Buddhism going out there starting wars. You don't see African shaman going out there starting wars. But who's starting wars? You see the Christians. They're the ones that are out there on the Christian crusades. They're the one out. Every president that comes into office has to prove that he's a Christian. And what is the first things they do? They start a war overseas. So,
I don't know, what is it?
What's that?
Say it again. What were you saying?
I said one of the first things that the president does when they become elected is they have to prove that they're Christian, and then they start a war.
let me kind of ask you this real quick, kind of not to stop you from your forward progress, but you mentioned something, because this relates to blacks a lot. You said that what a lot of things that white people were trying to do were to prove that they were morally superior, and that blacks were superiorly morally inferior. Yes. At some point. You said that was a very, very big negative. Let's talk about that a little bit, because we still see that today amongst blacks and blacks in America. Oh, why are they so violent? Blacks in Africa, why are they so stupid? Why are they so dumb? These people can't take care of themselves. Let's talk about the moral position. And is this a conspiracy theory in your opinion?
Okay, so yes, and what that is just that's the media propaganda focusing on the minors. Because if you look at the major crimes that are committed across this planet, if you look at them in their totality, it pales into comparison to what Black people are doing. And Black people are responding to a condition of oppression that continues to hit them. In other words, when people say stupid things like, well, slavery was in the past, can't you forget about that? Yeah, sure, we could forget about that if there wasn't this thing called social engineering, where every time we turn around, we're being hit with another type of propaganda, with another type of legislation meant to oppress us. And it's like, we cannot, remember I gave the example of the nomadic people that can settle down and they can thrive into a civilization. We don't have the opportunity here in North America to just be left alone. We're constantly bombarded. They're shipping, we have the cocaine and the crack being shipped into the communities. They have the legislation, 3 strikes, and mass incarceration. Then you have the whole thing with separating the male and female so that women can be their own independent and things of that nature.
Okay.
But now, you raise a very good point. I want to talk about this, actually, where we see there were 2 books that came out. One was George Orwell's 1984 and Aldous Huxley, A Brave New World. And both of those books projected a type of, a dystopian future where there would be a militarized new world order, right? And I think those books were a bit off, because I don't think that we're headed to a future where it's going to be a total militarized future and you're going to be subjugated to a fascist state. I think what they're more interested in doing is creating or mind manipulating us into accepting enslavement. Now, get what I'm saying. The conspiracy theorists agree with me. They know that we are being slowly manipulated mentally through mass media program to accept certain ideology. Now, the thing that they're coming out and they're talking a lot about this, and they're saying that Hollywood is programming us now with the SJW movement, and they have this subliminal programming, right? But the thing that they are missing the mark of is, I'm saying, well, that's what's been going on with African Americans for years. And we have been talking about this, about how the consensus on the planet is that anything associated with Black or Black people is inferior or negative. That's a mind programming. That's one of the biggest programmings that there is. This is something that we have to deal with, but yet they missed the mark on that. Every society in modern day sees Black people as the parasites of the planet. And that is by design. That is by design. That is a big conspiracy theory, but they don't talk about that.
Let me ask you this, because I know we'll get back to steering on your extra presentation, but let me ask you this, because me and you talk off the scenes, and you'll be involved in our show on Sunday. And I know that the last time you and Anthony Brian Logan, pretty much whenever Anthony Brian Logan comes on, and somebody that's kind of, I know you're not necessarily on the left per se, but you're definitely more left than he is. Anthony Brian Logan is probably known for saying, number one, there's no such thing as like white supremacy. And then, obviously, these conspiracy theories, it seems that Blacks have brought them against each other. Like, for example, when I go to Brazil, I went to Brazil last month. The media shows like all Black Brazilians are always doing bad, poor, creating crimes. At the same time, the Black Brazilians view themselves the same way that the whites are portraying them. So I guess what I want to know is, have you noticed that, us as Black people, just descendants of slaves, we have actually bought into looking at one another the same way that whites have looked at us? And what do you think that we can do to change that?
Well, that's exactly right. And let me say this. So him saying that there's no such thing as white supremacy, that's bullshit. All right. And there is a conspiracy, and anyone that doesn't believe that, then they're part of the matrix. Okay. Because it's very evident. And this goes back to what I was saying before about going to this future of the New World Order, where this future will be about mind programming. Now, you're looking at the finest example of programming that there is. Go to places like, if you look at Nigeria, if you look at places in Africa where the women now are using the white cream to lighten their faces up and things of that nature. That is an example of programming, where you now have drank the Kool-Aid. This is what we're dealing with here on a massive level. And this is not something that's happenstance. It's not organic. This was created and fostered throughout the planet to make it seem like like you said, the epitome of morality is white, when it's the exact reverse opposite. And let me explain this, that the moral aptitude comes out of the right brain. Black people are predominantly right brain. Okay, our cultures fostered morality. Ancient cultures of antiquity fostered morality, right? So for them to say that we are not moral, that we are primitive, we are like commit crimes is incorrect, and that's just part of the propaganda, But going back to what you were saying, and I'm familiar with what's going on in Brazil, where they had this one of the, I think it was a beauty contestant, she was dethroned, or the title was taken away from her because she was dark skinned, and that is just disgusting. That is just disgusting. So this is part of the programming. This is, the vote came in and she was elected. Okay, by the masses. You can't take that title away from her, just because she's not light enough, and what is that communicating to our kids? You know what I mean? So anyway, going back to what I was saying, that's the part of the mind programming. Many of us, and myself included, you can't separate yourself from this, have in some form or another been indoctrinated into this programming. And this is where, again, if you're going to talk about conspiracy theories, you've got to look at this type of mind programming. You got to say, is this, and these types of programming are are done in experimental labs. Let me clarify.
Okay.
You have these think organizations like the Hoover Institute, Rockefeller Foundation, Tavistock. These institutions are masters of coming up with social engineering and directing the culture of the population. They want to direct us into accepting certain ideas. And part of that is that, being dark skinned, being black, you're not adequate, you're not enough, that your cultures of antiquity were primitive and pagan. And that simply is not so. But instead of these, time and time again, when you look at the Discovery Channel, History Channel, when you look at what they call a so-called history, they always escape the fact that you're talking about cultures of antiquity that were of dark skin complexion. They don't want to deal and contend with that. So they kind of leave it as ambiguous. So when you're watching these programs and they talk about these things about, our ancient ancestors created writing, and they say it as if it's their ancestors, European ancestors. It's not your ancestors. Okay. This is you have to attribute this to black people, and they don't want to do this. That's why they have to be held accountable for this. And I tell you what, black people have really fallen short of challenging this in the academic circles. Okay. Instead, we're caught up in little things like, well, I went to a restaurant and they wrote the word nigger on a receipt.
Okay.
I'm like, really? That's what you want to challenge,
Okay. Let me do this real quick. Let me shout out to Ted Randolph. Interesting. Shout out to my bro out of Canada. Shout out to Marcus Brown that's in the building. Guys, if you want to subscribe to Ron Armstrong, aka say your name again, your YouTube name.
Yeah, Qesankh Kheperu.
Qesankh Kheperu. His channel is in the description. Okay, so all you need to do is go into the description and hit the bell, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. All his information is there. His Patreon information is there. His website's there. The brother has some really good content, not just on this stuff, but the brother is like, he's a filmmaker. He's an excellent content creator. He's written for me on Negro Manosphere. Let me go ahead. I guess so. Let's talk about the other stuff you wanted to get into, and I'll kind of go from there.
Let me say this though. I just want to go back to the whole the ancient civilization of Kemet and what's going on there. The issue that we're having. Here's what we're having. Right. Many of our historical artifacts, the research is done by white men. Okay, so the academic circles are predominantly done by white men. Now, if you are someone who comes with a different perspective on history that doesn't align with the conventional thought process, they ostracize you. Okay. Now, the problem that we've encountered is a lot of our history is in the hands of racist white men. Okay. Mm-hmm. And there have been some good white men and women who have tried to come out with the truth, but have either been ostracized, discredited, or in many cases, taken out. Now, I want to point out one gentleman that needs to be pointed out. This is Zahi Hawass. He was the former minister of antiquities of Egypt, the museum in Egypt in Cairo. This man was trying to hide the fact that the ancient Egyptians were black. Okay. And there have been a lot of charges and allegations levied against him. But I'm just using that as an example that our history is in the hands of individuals like this who are covering up the truth of history. And we have to deal with that. We have to come out with our own researchers, our own scientists, our own anthropologists to go out there and do the research. Because if we don't know how many undiscovered kingdoms or how advanced our ancestors were because of these scientists holding back the truth. So we have to go and start to deal and contend with that. All right. So I just wanted to point that out, that many times we're being given disinformation. All right.
Okay.
So that's one of the points. Another point in terms of the conspiracy theory is this is going out there a lot, is where they talk about, these alien visitations are happening, and there's these blonde, blue-eyed aliens, which is just white supremacist bullshit. You know what I mean? And so we know that one of the first cases of UFO abductions was reported by Betty and Barney Hill. And this goes back in the 1960s, and they were a mixed race couple, right? And they mentioned nothing about blonde hair, blue-eyed aliens. Okay. So a lot of information we're seeing that's going about on the internet is disinformation. And some of it is coming from the government to put out the disinformation to mislead us and put us in a different direction. There's been a UFO researcher by the name of Stephen Greer who's come out and who's kind of like poo-pooed all of that talk about, the pale skinned, blonde, blue-eyed aliens, because that's just white supremacy and all that coming and just injecting itself in this whole UFO abduction thing. So I just wanted to point that out as well. So moving further, so when we talk about, and this is a big thing you hear about people trapped in the matrix and all of that, and so the matrix is really, it's really a kind of like mind programming, a thought process of how you're going along with the conventional thought process of modern day, right? Okay. So going back to what I was saying before, so if we're going to talk about these things, we have to look, I think the conspiracy theorists have to look back at the African-American community. Let us look at slavery, the North American slave trade, what's going on there. Okay. The conspiracy theorists are talking about, well, they're going to depopulate the planet from 8 billion to 500 million or whatever, right? And so there's going to be this mass extermination. How is it going to be done? We don't know, but we know that the New World Order or the Illuminati has this plan to depopulate the planet or enslave the planet, right? But then again, when you look back at slavery and you look back what has been done to Africa, colonized it, the murder, the rape and pillage of Africa, is that not the same thing? And then what I say to some of these conspiracy theorists, when I get into these discourses with them, I say, if you're going to talk about how you believe that our government is going to create some virus or something to depopulate the planet, you're going to have to look at slavery and what happened back then with the DOS, descendants of slaves, and say, was that not the test run for what you think is going to happen in the future? Right. Look at what happened to us, and you'll see what's going to happen to you. Okay, that's an example, but they refuse to look at that. You see, they don't want to deal with that issue. So I say, you have to encompass that. You cannot talk about a future of depopulation and slavery and control without looking at what has happened to almost every indigenous culture on the planet. Look at the Australian Aborigines. Look what happened to them. Look at the Native Americans. They're virtually extinct. they were taken off the planet. So you want to talk about this future, this new world order, but you don't want to look at what's happened to the people in the past.
Can I ask a question? And shout out to Mr. Law. Guys, we will have a panel open tonight. Going to get Chris on there. Shout out to N1 Falcon, but he has to work, but we'll do a show tonight. Let me talk to you about this whole new world order, because there are a lot of people who will say, well, Ron, you're talking about conspiracy theorists have a half a brain. Well, this whole new world order, isn't that a conspiracy theory? What would you say to somebody who says that?
No, because, and this is what I've always said, right? And same point I was making. This new world order that the conspiracy theorists said that we're going in, no, we're not going in any direction. And let me say this, O'Shea, we are already here. This is the new world order. Okay. Because if you look at the space-time continuum, and what I mean by that is the timeline. If ancient Egypt and our civilizations, I don't want to just focus on Egypt, if our civilizations in Africa were allowed to continue because they were mainly right brain civilizations, or we say integrated brain civilizations, meaning they use both the left and the right hemisphere of their brains. So what does that mean? That we were a group of geniuses. We were geniuses. They talk about Imhotep was a multi-genius. No, we all were geniuses because we're whole brain thinkers, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're looking at the new world order, it is already here. The point of the fact that if those civilizations in Africa were allowed to continue, we would have flying cars now. We would be Wakanda now here in North America. Okay, but because they were not allowed to continue, because they were invaded and torn down, this space-time continuum that we're living in is corrupted. It's corrupted by left brain thinking. What is left brain thinking? It's very individualistic. We're operating now. What's going on now is they're forcing everybody to think more linear, more left brain. And what does that get you to think? More individualistic. They say, well, it's the individual that's important above the collective. No, it's the collective that's important. but we don't operate based on those ancient African principles. No, we operate based on, well, I have the right, I'm individual, I can be whoever I want, I can call myself whatever I want, I'm binary, I'm this, I'm that, but that's not how we live. But anyway, to my point, we are already in a new world order. This is existing right now because this is not the way our ancestors wanted us to live. Okay. This is not the advanced civilization that we should have. Okay. Now, the next thing that's going to happen is that the ruling elite is just going to move to the next phase. They've already accomplished their goal. They have won. They have conquered the planet because the entire planet believes that left brain European thinking is the way to go. Mm-hmm. The whole planet believes that. And there are pockets of resistance, which is good. But what we have to understand is that it's not just a battle of skin complexion or tone or race. It is a battle for how you think. This is why I say conspiracy theorists think left brain. They don't think whole brain. The left brain is the progenitor of racism and sexism. That's where it comes out of, because the left brain does not think holistically. It does not compass the yin and the yang. This is why when Roman Emperor Constantine in 325 AD rewrote the Bible, he took the moon cult out of the Bible. What is the moon cult? He made it a sun cult, the son of God, Jesus. So you worship Jesus, but you forget about Mary. So in other words, we worship Asar and Aset. Okay, we worship the male and female principle. Constantine took the female principle out, and now we're operating based on left brain, which is the analogy of the male principle. The right brain is the female principle. So we operate just on the left brain thinking. You go to the modern education system, you learn by rote. What makes a scholar? What makes someone who's academically achieved? Someone who's just memorized and can regurgitate the information, but not has real intuitive or intuition, who can really know how to think, which is a right brain trait. Okay. And if you look at the Greek and Aristotle and all these guys, the Greek philosophers, the way they taught and learned was through oratory skills. You went, they talked, there was a discourse, and that's how you learn. Versus in ancient Africa, you learn through a process of both left and right. You learn process through linear thinking and also through meditation and trance induction. Okay. And we know that the Russians have done experiments into trance, and they say the way to produce Nikolai Tesla's and Einstein's is through the right brain. So what does that mean? That's how we built our ancient civilizations. That's how we built our pyramids, becoming whole brain thinkers. Okay. Not just left brain, because the left brain only thinks in terms of technology. It doesn't think in terms of morality. It thinks only in terms of the hierarchical order. When you're looking at, like, the example is Europeans think hierarchy, right? So non-Westerners and Africans think in a circle holistically. We don't think about, like positions of power and climbing the corporate ladder. No, we think of a cosmological perspective. What is the ordering of the universe? There's a place for everything and everything in this place. There's an ecosystem where everything depends upon one another in order to sustain itself. Now, what does the left brain do? What does the left brain do, O'Shea? The left brain does not understand holistically. So it looks at all the races on the planet and think that it can eliminate certain races, and it places them according to a hierarchy, not understanding that the reason that you have a diversity of races is a survival technique from nature. If you look at nature, which the word netter, nature comes out of the word netter, which is God. Nature creates a diversity of species for survival, so that if any one species is devastated by a disease or natural disaster, the other races will survive. That's the intelligence of nature netter. Okay. So that's what we have to look at, that there is an intelligence to everything. But the left brain that thinks concrete does not look at the metaphysical. It does not look at the idea that God is abstract. It has to be a white man in a beard up in the clouds. Okay. Okay.
Let me do this real quick. Guys, we got 120 people watching right now. I saw Anthony Brian Logan in here. He's taking some shots. That's what Anthony Brian Logan is. But Anthony Brian Logan, you will be seeing this brother on Sunday, okay, on the panel. So he had you on the ropes, man, the last time. So shout out to brother Anthony Brian Logan. But ABL versus Ronald versus Brother Sanchez. That would be something. What do you think about? I mean, just real quick, what do you think about the flat Earth people?
Um, in 2015, I believe it was around October 2015. If you go back and you look at the records on the internet, that is the first time you'll see that the flat Earth theory cropped up, and it cropped up out of nowhere. So I did a video on this. So that's part of disinformation.
Okay. So maybe you would be willing to debate Brother Sanchez one day. So let me just do this real quick. Shout out to Anthony Brian Logan, because he's the bully. He's the bully in here, Black YouTube. He's here. I want to just give a shout out to all the brothers who are enjoying the interview. Who the fuck is this calling me? Hold on a second. Mm-hmm. This is LAR movement. God damn. Hold on. Yeah, so LAR don't know that I'm online right now. But So anyways, guys, thank you for supporting. Get the likes up, brothers. Also, we will have another show after this. Let me talk to you about this is Left Brain real quick, right? Mm-hmm. And guys, get the likes up. Y'all know how we do over here. 130 people watching. And shout out to Arain Nice and Dr. Deacon Eric P for the super chats, brothers. I appreciate you guys. Let me ask you this. You say that Black people are left brain, right? And like very, sort of right brain thinkers, but white people are left brain. But then when you look at society right now, and you look how the Black community is right now, right? It seems like the Black community is, I guess you would refer to it as being left brain. You see a lot of individualism in our communities, no matter where you go. I've been to Africa twice, and I haven't been there long enough to make the assessment. But from what I can gather from what people tell me who were there, it's kind of like everybody for themselves type of thing. Do you feel that African Americans are or have shifted from the right brain to left brain thinking?
Absolutely, and that's the problem that we're faced with. Let me explain this to you. So it was what is his name, Dr. Umar Johnson, right? He wants to start a school, right? And many other individuals are trying to start a school, and I agree with that. I think you should self-tutor your children, but the problem is what we have to look at what produces well-adjusted individuals, because the problems that we're having in the modern education system, it's not just putting a Black face on historical figures, and that's what a lot of people in the Hotep community, African American community, think that that's education. That is not education. You're just changing, you're just window dressing, right? Okay. You have to look at the fact that, you have this whole thing with the bell curve, and they've done these studies, and they always do these fake studies to prove how inferior we are, how we're not, accomplishing as much as white people are. You cannot destroy our culture and our way of life and then set a standard that we have to operate by. It's not going to work. One of the reasons why Chinese people look at the Chinese and say they're very good at math is because their language is conducive to using numbers in a very accelerated way. They're not genetically disposed to being mathematicians or brilliant. They're not. So what we have to look at is when we learn from a linear perspective based on the Greek way of learning, we're not learning according to how we're wired and how we're supposed to be. We are not supposed to be operating out of a left brain thought process. And even if you take your children out of school and you educate them on your own, you're still not going to be doing them justice, and they're still not going to be well adjusted. We are primarily integrated brain thinkers. We think holistically. For example, if you look at our language, we use puns, right? You'll say things like, oh, that's fat, or, that's dope. The ancient Egyptians did that as well. They were very good in using puns. They told stories within a story within a story, okay? Mm-hmm. So that's how we think. We think in metaphors, in analogies, okay? That's how we need to learn. We most of the things that we learn, if you look at the ancient Egyptians, we had three forms of writing. We had demonic, hieratic, and hieroglyphic, right? Mm-hmm. That's a whole brain thinking. The way you're learning today is one form of writing and reading, and it's very cold and very stale. So anyway, my point being is that going back to the Russian studies and how they produced accelerated learners is what they called it, was by using the right brain and trance induction. They taught people while in a state of trance, and these people were able to retain the information and excel at certain fields. That's the type of people that we are. We are right brain learners. We're not left brain learners. We don't, sitting in a classroom in a hierarchical order when you have the professor or the teacher up there giving a lecture, that's not the proper way to learn. And that's not how we learned in ancient antiquity. It's not. And it's the wrong way of learning. It's coming out of the European mindset. So when I say that the conspiracy theorists have half a brain, what I'm saying is that they're looking at the problem from half a perspective. They don't want to admit that the problem with the world today is that the world lacks what the African people gave to the world was holistic brain thinking. That's what we have to get back to. And that's what we're fighting on this planet for. We're fighting to get the planet back on track to holistic thinking. Okay. This is why our Chinese brothers and sisters are on the right path, the ancient traditions, because they looked at homeopathy. They gave respect to the ancestors. If you go into mainly the traditional Chinese cultures, families, they have shrines to their ancestors. That's what African people used to do. And if you do the study, the first Chinese people were the Nak people. They were dark skinned. Okay. So what I'm saying to you is, Black people, what we have to do, and we have a tendency of doing this, is to look at things superficially. We're looking at things as if we put a black face on it, it solves the problem. If we can have elect a certain official, it solves the problem. If we can create our own schools, it solves the problem. No. You have to change the thinking of the people first. And this is coming back to what I was saying, the matrix of control. And one of the master conspiracy theorists, David Icke, had this right when he talked about, and he said it in one of his lectures, that it is a shame that the people who are the descendants of slaves who were forced to practice Christianity are today the propagators of Christianity now that the chains have been taken away from us. So here we are still preaching Christianity, still preaching that religion, knowing that was caused our downfall. Okay. Because it is a left brain religion. You see, the Bible is based on astrotheology, the study of the stars. Why do you see when you see Jesus in the Bible and he's associated with the fish? That is a sign of Pisces. Okay. So you have to understand that encrypted in the Bible, it was never meant to be an historical document. It was a story of allegories. And that's how our ancestors told stories in ancient Africa. So these imbeciles, Christian ministers, come out there and they teach us a history book, not understanding that we told stories within stories and layers within layers. And that appeals to the right brain, because if you can tell a story that's peppered with analogies or metaphors, you retain the information more. And then it opens up a wealth of knowledge. And this is how you produce a Tahuti or Imhotep. And Tahuti's thought is the god of wisdom. He's also called Hermes, okay? So we have to start thinking in those terms, which is why some of the brothers and sisters in the Hotep community, they're on point. They know it, but they're not applying the information. They're more so just talking and giving lectures and things of that nature. We have to now start applying this information. If we're going to take our kids out of school, then we're going to have to educate them using right brain techniques, not left brain techniques. It's not going to work. We're not going to save the planet by perpetuating the same thinking that's been dominating. It's not going to work.
Let me ask you this: what are some right brain, techniques? And while you're doing it, I'm going to just quickly go to the restroom real quick. But you can just continue to talking, and I'll be listening on the phone. So, can you give some examples of a right brain learning technique versus a left brain learning techniques for people that may not know what you're like?
Yeah, so right brain. Know that too. Yeah. Sure. So right brain techniques of learning is when you put yourself into a meditative trance state, and that when you're in that meditative trance state, you're more conducive to learning. So you can have a professor, someone lecturing to you, but the students have to be in the right right trance state. And when that information is conveyed to them, then it goes from short-term memory to long-term memory, and they retain the information more. And another technique that we have to get back into is the practice of learning frequency and vibrations, mantras, okay? And this is coming out of the Vedic tradition. Now, mantras, there are mantras for everything. There are healing mantras. There are mantras that can accelerate learning. There are mantras that can get you to think more integrated in terms of brain functions. And we have not gone back into using these ancient techniques. And we need to start doing that because our civilization was built on frequencies. Even the bastardized English language that we communicate with today is devoid of sound and frequencies, which is how we communicated in ancient antiquity. The words that we communicated had frequencies to them. And those frequencies stimulated certain aspects of the brain. So when we use mantras, instead of, for example, instead of your son, you're saying to your son, okay, you know what, I need you to sit down and study these math problems so you can be good at math. If you learn the science of mantras and frequency, you can give your son or daughter a specific mantra that when they recite activates certain centers in the left brain so they can be more acute to mathematics, okay? They can be more acute to reading and writing. You can produce geniuses this way. And I'm not just saying this, as I said before, the Russians pioneered this. And they created institutions in Russia that are now teaching these trance induction techniques, which they call as either super learning or accelerated learning. But this is something that we have forgotten and we don't practice anymore. If you go to certain regions in Africa, you'll see that the language is like clicks and sounds and vibrations. Well, that's for a reason. When you look at the ancient Kemetic language, they named themselves after deities, but those deities, those sounds, reverberated and activated certain chakras or meridians in the system. So this is a hidden science that we have to get back to. And Western science is now recognizing this. They're now pioneering this. And the one thing that's really pitiful about this is that you have these studies by these Western scientists that are coming out, and they're validating certain things. They're saying that, well, you know what, reincarnation may actually be true because we know that energy is neither created nor destroyed. It just simply changes form. But our ancestors, the ancient African shaman and Shah women, knew this information. So, you know, when they talked about the Dogon discovering Ceres and other stars, and they were saying that we don't know how they could have discovered all of that. And then they come out and they discover stars that we already knew about. They act as if they accomplished something. What they're doing is they're looking back in ancient history, taking the information and republishing it so they can win awards and get their papers published. And they're riding on the backs of our ancient ancestors who've already pioneered all of this. So there's no need to reinvent the wheel. We've already done it. We just have to reclaim this information, which I say it's important that when we're moving toward the future, the fight is, yes, number one, to get out of the matrix, the mind of control that we're in, but also to get back to understanding that who we are as a people was a holistic people. And another thing I want to bring to the attention is that if we're going to practice African traditions or really celebrate our ancestors, we have to get out of the idea of saying white people are evil or that they are our enemies. You can't think that way because whole brain understands that one aspect is just another aspect of the whole, that you need the whole, and that if one part is missing, it's not complete. So we have to look at everyone else as just an aspect of who we are. In essence, there is just one collective mind, the collective consciousness. And there's no individual consciousness, that's a left brain thinking. There's just a one collective consciousness. And the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung said that there was the collective consciousness, and in that collective consciousness, there was archetypes, meaning that there's a way of communicating that we all have through our collective consciousnesses. So in me, the reason why I can't be an individual and just do whatever I want to do, because what I do affects you and affects people far and wide. And this is what they have documented and called the 100 monkey principle, because what one person does will affect the entire group or the species. This is why we have a lot of behavior that is transferred from one individual to the next individual and to the group. And we don't realize it. But the ruling elite, they understand this principle. They understand that all they have to do is introduce a behavior to a set of people, and then it will reach a critical mass, and that behavior will transfer over psychically or through the collective consciousness to the whole group. This is how, when we as African Americans exhibit a certain type of culture, whether it's the pants hanging down or using certain nomenclatures or terms, we'll find that our brothers and sisters on the West and East Coast, they also will exhibit that same behavior. And this is the whole brain thinking. We have to be very careful of how we conduct ourselves, because that information is carried over. And if you research the 100 monkey principle, you'll find that it was the Japanese mesquite monkeys that they found on this island. They were cleaning nuts in a certain particular way. They were shown how to clean these nuts. And then they found that these monkeys in an adjacent island were doing the exact same thing without having contact, physical contact with those monkeys in the first island. And they were saying, well, how is that possible? So the behavior was transferred in a way where there was no physical contact to those other monkeys. And this is where they got the whole idea of the 100 monkey syndrome or the 100 monkey principle, that behaviors can be transferred from groups and individuals. And this is another thing I want to point out, and this is one of the final things I will say. The ruling elite know that if you take a child who is having difficulty in school, in the classroom, and if you put them in a classroom, and they do a lot of this to young Black men, they'll put them into what they call a slow learning classroom, where there's nothing but a bunch of other kids who are troublemakers. That, for slow learners is what they call it, that child will not excel. That makes the situation worse. But if you take a child that's a slow learner and you put them among A students, the collective energy vibration will have that child come up to the A level, because that information is transmitted psychically. So that child will be influenced by the other students who are at the A level. So what we have to understand is, when they want to put your child in a slow learning classroom, or they say your child has difficulty learning, that's bullshit. Don't let them do that. If you want to learn a certain subject matter, go around experts. You don't have to learn from the experts. Just being around them, the information will be transferred to you, and you'll find that your aptitude has increased for that particular subject matter.
Okay. Let me do this, guys. Let me shout out to a few people. I see Brother Nagone 11 in the building. We got 169 people watching. Guys, do me a favor, right? We got a lot of brothers in here. We got Brother Qesankh Kheperu. I don't know how to say it, but I'm trying to say it better. We got Anthony Brian Logan here, still trolling. Anthony Brian Logan, you will have your day in court on Sunday. All right, let me talk about this panel on Sunday. I got Brother Armstrong on the show right now. He'll be on there. We'll be talking about black male Trump supporters and immigration. All right, so that will be Anthony Brian Logan. That'll be Search for Uhuru. That will be the Uber guy that's going to be out. Okay, brother. So we're going to have a real good panel of black men arguing the positions and hopefully trying to come to some kind of resolution on black men coming together on certain things. So wanted to shout out to him. Let me shout out to some of the super chats, because we have some brothers there. My brother, loyalty, that blind boy used clicking sounds to navigate around. Hell, even rode his bicycle that way. Damn. Wow, a blind person wearing a bike. I know that. Marcus Love, shout out to you, brother. Marcus Love, what's your theory on dark energy remembering our past lives? All right. Southern Comfort, first time donating to the channel. Thanks for the comic. By the way, if you want my comic, Dr. Action is free, right? All you got to do is drop your email for the Negro Manosphere's comic. Okay, I keep forgetting to promote it. But if you want the comic, Dr. Action, just drop your email. I'll send it to you. But all you got to do, you have to read it, though, okay? So basically, drop your email. I'll send you the Dr. Action comic. It is a classic. And let me get, there are some other brothers that are donating the super chat. I believe that was it. Anybody that I forgot to mention, just, let me know. That's all we have there. All right.
What was the brother's question? He super
Do you
chat.
believe that you could use dark energy to remember stuff in your past lives?
Okay, so the way that is looked upon, and again, we have these modern scientists who are claiming to pioneer this type of information when our ancestors always talked about this in terms like dark matter. When we look at things like that, you have to think about Amen. Amen is the hidden. So when you say Amen in church, you're really referring to God. And Amen Ra, that's another deity. But what they have proven is that if you look at black holes, right, there is what they call is the event horizon, right? So if you were to go and be sucked into a black hole, when you get to the event horizon, you would be stretched, right? So you would be what they call a spaghettified. Your legs would become longer, and then your head would stay at one point while your legs would stretch, and then eventually you would fall into what they call the singularity of the black hole. But what they discovered is that in that event horizon, the information of who you are and what you are is retained. It is not destroyed. So all the information on who we are is retained in the universe. And we know that the matrix, if you want to call it, all that there is waves. It's waves. And there's infinite possibility. And when you focus on the wave, and you have a set belief system, it does what we call as a superimposition or the collapse. It collapses into particles and forms a certain reality. All right. But just remember, in reference to your question about dark energy, all information is stored. It's never dissipated. So you have to understand that the left brain, in terms of linear thought process that the Europeans are so fond of, is a fallacy. There is no such thing as time. There is no such thing as the past and the future. The only thing that exists is the present now moment. So what you think is a past life exists in another now moment. It doesn't exist in the past. It's happening right now in this space and time. All right. So the past and the future are different perspectives on the now moment, but they're not actually fixed points in space and time. They're not, because who you are is consciousness, and consciousness has the quality of non-locality. What does that mean? That consciousness and who you are cannot be defined in terms of one fixed point in space and time. You exist everywhere. Okay. And so when you talk about the past lives, don't get into the idea of, oh, that was in the past. No, it's happening right now. And you are accessing those memories and those ideas at this present moment. You may have what you call as deja vu. You may have thoughts that come to you. You don't know where they're coming from you, but you're pulling from a past life those memories. So I hope that answers the question.
Hey man, you're a lot better than me at this than I am. I brother went into some real deep stuff. Went on that one now, Vaughn. All right, so thank you for that answer. Let me do this here. Thank you, brother Terrence. I just sent him the comic. So let me check the chat here. My brother Odinga, airplanes, rockets plus use aerodynamic technology. Thus, air is necessary for all these machines to work. How can space shuttles maneuver in so-called space when there is no air in a perfect vacuum? No air, no maneuvering. All right, see, y'all brothers is getting deep. See, that's what I like about y'all. You know what I mean? I really, I'm like, my thinking goes to a certain level, and that's it. I'm very niggified in my thinking. You hear the left brain thinking, right brain thinking, then there's niggified thinking, and that's where I'm at. But it's so good to see all these brothers, man, that are so deep in light topics like this. Because I was even asking brother Rosin, man, are you sure this is going to go through? Cool. He's like, yeah. And you guys actually have showed a lot of positivity towards this type of show. So you know what? I think this is what we're going to start doing, brother Kheperu. We can start creating more content for these brothers on this, and you can take them over in a different galaxy, man. Because I can't take them there, but you can though.
I think we need to challenge these conspiracy theorists, because they're so quick to point out these conspiracies, but they're not apt to revealing the truth of the matter. And I think, again, going back to what I was saying, they want to keep claiming that our ancient civilizations were created by alien astronauts. I'm like, no, you just don't want to admit the truth that they were created by black people. So we have to deal and contend with that. And I think that we in the Negro's Manosphere have to start challenging them.
Hold on a second. I like being called brother or sister. Well, are you a hermaphrodite, motherfucker? What the fuck type of show? I guess see, because I said, Nick, I like being called brother or sister. What? How many genitalia do you have, motherfucker? Get your ass up out of here. Shout out to Dr. Marcus Love. Thank you for answering my question on dark energy. Shout out to the brother Marcus Love. All right, now I'm just joking with you, dude. Whatever your name is, Ron of Sonos. And I don't want no problems, man. All right. So, brother Moses Jenkins, man, if you want to get on the panel, that's my brother, man. He graduated from Morehouse a few years ago from my neighborhood. He was, I believe, like the valedictorian. You know what I mean? In that class, so he's from the same neighborhood I'm from. With the same church we was coming up. We were, same house parties and all that shit. He had a brother. His brother is like probably one of the smartest dudes I ever met, DJ. So shout out to him. It's good to see him. He's out, doing his thing in corporate America. So shout out to brother Moses, man. He, really came a long way. So I think me and him are like one of the few black dudes that from my neighborhood that actually went to college outside of something for sports. But so shout out to my brother, man, in the chat. So I would love to get him on to tell his story, man, because we come from the same place. He's seen a lot of same shit I've seen. So anything else you want to drop on him today, brother?
Yeah, I just want to say, and we just have to be really careful about in terms of the whole idea of us fighting for liberation, fighting for freedom, fighting for equality, because if we get too caught up in all of that, we're going to miss the boat, meaning that what we have to start looking at is bringing back the wisdom, the technology of the ancient past, of who we were as a people. And much of that is not going to be done through just mere customs or show, meaning that you call yourself a name of Ra-Hotep or whatever. You've got to get deep into the science of how our ancestors lived and what they practiced. And for that, you have to understand that it's all about how they thought. And you got to look at the distinction between us and Europeans and celebrate those distinctions and not look at them as opposing principles. But you have to understand that we developed as whole brain thinkers and they developed as left brain thinkers. And that enabled us to create civilization. We created civilization. And we have to keep that in mind, because now what we're seeing is a very critical time, is that Black Panther came out. So many people are on this Wakanda kick. And I'm like, I'm all for that. But you have to first understand that in order to bring about a world like that, we have to start thinking in the correct way and educating our kids in the correct way. And that means that we have to go back into the ancient metaphysics. And I see these brothers online, mm-hmm. and they're always like, they're making fun of the Hotep brothers, and they're. But I'm saying, listen, you got to work with everybody. You can't be calling people coons and white people crackers. You can't do that. That was not our way of living and thinking. We looked holistically. We saw things as complementary, not contradictory. You know what I mean? And when you start thinking that way, the world will open up to you, and you'll start to see things in a different perspective and find solutions where you didn't think solutions existed. Right now, we're butting up against each other. We're butting up against the European system. We have to get back to the thought process, which gave birth to all these ancient civilizations. And I suspect that our history is even more advanced in terms of technology than we realize, because now many in the conspiracy theory arena are admitting that history has been rewritten, that what we thought was this, Columbus discovering a new world and all these things may not have actually happened. And I agree with that. But they're still falling short and not admitting that history was whitewashed. I said, let's start there first. Let's say that history was whitewashed. Then we can go on to talk about maybe those certain things have not happened, And I'm going to take a bold leap right now. And this is something I talk about in my community. And I want the brothers and sisters to just ponder this. If you're really into the whole conspiracy thing, if you're really a flat earther, I want you to think about this. I said before, there only exists the now moment. There's actually no past and no future, right? And the now moment is predicated upon all possibilities existing. We know this is proven in quantum mechanics, that as soon as you observe something, the observer observes something, it responds to the observer. And this was tested in laboratories with subatomic particles, okay? So it collapses. There's a superimposition theory. It collapses into one of infinite possibilities. So if we are talking about a matrix, and this is the key thing that most conspiracy theorists harp on, that we live in a matrix of control, okay? And I agree with that. Now, if you're looking at everywhere you see, you're seeing towers that are putting out vibrations and energies to get you to think a certain way, to get you to manufacture a reality, one of many infinite possibilities, then I'm going to ask you this. What if this reality that we see around us in terms of the house, the cars, the plane, what if that reality does not actually exist, that we are manufacturing that? What if we are in a hypnotic state, a trance state? Now, I'm going to throw another thing at you. What if really slavery did not happen? What if it's happened because we told it was happened, and therefore we, being in this hypnotic state, manufacture that history, manufacture that reality? So if that is the case, then can we not manufacture a new reality? Can we manufacture a Wakanda? Can we change the reality that we are interacting with? Because we're told that we live in a holographic universe, that it is not real. It is Maya. It is an illusion. And that it only comes from the synaptic connections, just like the movie The Matrix. You think it's real. And I believe that character was eating that steak and he was saying the steak isn't real. It's just my brain is communicating to me and telling me that it has flavor and has taste. Well, what I'm saying to you is we can create whatever reality that we want if we understand how to manipulate the matrix. So I don't think the matrix is to be feared. I think it's to be celebrated because it gives us an opportunity to come into our power, to understand of who we were in history as God men and God women, as netters. So let's look at it that way and say that maybe we're more powerful than we believe. And maybe the reason why they're oppressing us is because they know the potential of our power. Okay. And I think that the salvation in the future is going to be with us aligning with people of like mind, regardless of race, to work for the collective good of humanity, because we're all trapped in this prison, white and black. So that's my final thoughts on that.
All right, I'll tell you what, guys, who want to, I mean, listen, I know there's some people out there that have been commenting in the chat, brothers who feel a little bit different than him. I'm open to bringing it to the table. I'm sure, Kheperu is going to stand on everything he wants to say. So if you guys want to put a panel together next week, and they can have somewhat of a discussion about this and conspiracy theories, it's not really my thing per se, but I know a lot of people are interested in it. So you know what? I like to do what the brothers want, and a lot of brothers like this kind of content. I will set it up. All you got to do, if you're interested in being in on it, just got to email me at planetoshay@gmail.com. If I get more than 2 or 3 guys that want in on the subject, I will put you on. You guys can talk about it here. I did a flat Earth panel. It's actually one of the best shows I've done with Brother Sanchez. It was BGS Itmore. I didn't know what the fuck was going on, but it was on fire. Who remembers that flat Earth debate I had on my channel with BGS and Brother Sanchez? If you remember it, press 3. But I did it on my last channel on O'Shea Duke Jackson, and I was lost the whole entire show, but it was on fire. We had like 400 or 500 people watching, and it was off the chain. So for those people who want to subscribe to Brother Kheperu, all that you got to do is go into the actual description, click the link, hit the bell on his channel. All of his stuff is there. YouTube, Patreon, website. Okay, thank you, Doug. Doug has his stuff in the channel. Shout out to Brother Nagon 11, man. We're gonna bring him on tonight for tonight's show. We're gonna have a show in about 2 hours, brother. We're gonna talk about this polygamy side chick situation. The show that I was gonna do last night, but unfortunately I got tied up. So we will have a double header tonight here on the channel. I want to thank all you brothers for listening in. It was a great show. Anything else you want to say on the topic tonight?
No, and I just want to tell the brothers and sisters that we have a wonderful history and we can have a wonderful future. We just have to keep fighting and stay in the game and just give libation to your ancestors. That's important. And, visit my website, my YouTube channel, and, support me on Patreon if you are able to. I would appreciate it. And I have, if you go to my website, Qesankh Kheperu, I have a number of ebooks that you can get more in depth into what I'm talking about. And I cover a wide array of subject matters, even including polygamy.
Okay. All right. So guys, do me a favor. So tonight we're gonna have like I said, another great show. It's so many brothers that I really want to work with and do stuff. I'm kind of, like I said, backed up right now, but we will definitely do this particular show tonight. I'm gonna schedule it. Let me just look at a few other things real quick. Let me see. Shit.
Let me can I say one thing?
Yeah. It's called Can You Escape the Friend Zone? Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So what we need to be looking at, and this is very celebrated in the conspiracy theory arena, is Hermes Trismegistus. That means Hermes thrice great. And he is known as Tehuti, or Thoth, God of wisdom. And the reason why he's called God of wisdom, because he deals primarily with the right brain and as an integrated brain thinker. And he was the advisor to Heru in the battle of Asar and Aset. And most people in the African American community know the story. But anyway, the story goes that there are the emerald tablets of Thoth, and those emerald tablets are in the ether, and that you have to recite a word of power to access that wisdom and to gain that wisdom and knowledge. So my point is that our ancestors, when the archaeologists went into ancient Africa, ancient Kemet, they could not find religious books, they could not find historical books, and they were like, well, there's no evidence of how they built the pyramids. And one of the reasons why, because we transfer information into the ether and we accessed it that way. We pulled it down from what we call the Akashic records. And this is how you intuit wisdom. This is how you become a Tehuti, a wise person, a sage. And that's what we all need to aspire to be, Tehuti.
Tehuti. All right. Well, again, brothers, I really thank all of you for, like I said, listen to the show. We will be back later on tonight, and like I said, we'll be back in about 2 hours. I'll send the links to everybody. Can You Escape the Friend Zone actually is the name of the show. So brothers, thank you so much. Thank you, brother Ron, man. I am a Patreon of yours. You've always supported this channel, and this isn't our first time working together. You're an excellent writer, excellent filmmaker. We've talked about that. You've written some really great articles on the site on Negro Mesmer. So thank you for your contribution in that. And is there anything else you'd like to say tonight?
Oh, yeah. Watch. I did a film. You guys got to check it out. It's called White Power. You can go check it out at White Power Short. That's whitepowershort.com. Mm-hmm. And it's a pun. It's a hilarious mockumentary of white supremacist groups.
Okay. All right. So, guys, check that out. And again, thanks again, brother, for coming on tonight. And we'll definitely see you on Sunday on the panel. And we'll be getting it lit.
All right.
Peace.
Peace.